Wonderful. So let me, there's this, okay. So the 2022 Nobel Prize for Physics was announced a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And 4th October it was announced. Yeah, so just 2.5 weeks back. So the prize was awarded to 3 physicists who have experimentally disproven what is known as Bell's theorem, on which is on it is a theorem in physics related to quantum mechanics, quantum physics. So quantum physics, just everyone doesn't know what everything is, so I'll just start at the beginning. So quantum physics is the physics which deals with matter at a microscopic level, submicroscopic level, at the atomic level, at the fundamental particle level. How do these particles interact and how do they behave and all that, as opposed to classical physics, which deals with bigger objects. It deals with, tables and chairs and people and planets. So quantum physics deals with very, very, very tiny matter at the tiny scale. Udhar kaisa hota hai? What is the property of matter at that scale? How does it behave? And the interesting thing, of course, is that this so-called gross matter, footballs and tables are made of ultimately what is the word? Conglomerates or accumulation of these fundamental particles. So matter is both at a gross level, it is whatever it is, and it behaves in certain ways. And then what they found is that at the microscopic level, at the atomic level, matter does not behave at all like the way normal matter that we are used to. And then the question, of course, arises, if matter behaves in a certain way at that level and everything is made up of those tiny, tiny things, then obviously it must carry some of that weirdness or magic or whatever you want to call it into the real world also. So-called real. Everything is real, but this world that we see normally with our eyes uh, and ears. So one of the uh, one of the strange behavior of matter at that level is what is known as entanglement. So entanglement is when two particles have interacted with each other, then in ways which is too much physics to explain, but if in common terms, if they've interacted with each other, then they somehow seem to continue to remain in contact with each other, no matter how far apart they are. So this is strange stuff, right? So very specifically, if you take a particular fundamental particle, they call it qubits, but it's just like any of the fundamental particles that you're familiar with, like electrons and protons and subatomic and elementary particles, quasars and sorry, not quasars, quarks. Quasars are the are star-like, but quarks and leptons and even tinier particles. So these qubits have one property, just like everything has a property like mass, and mass means it has a certain mass, or it has a volume, or it has an electric charge and things like that. One of the properties that particles possess, just property means any कोई जो गुण है, किसी भी चीज का जो गुण है, उसको property. So these qubits have a property called spin. So there is either a spin up or a spin down. So the particle has only two possible states of that property. It can either be spin up or spin down. So let's say two particles interact and they are entangled in in the definitions provided by physics of what entanglement is. Once they have been entangled, you kind of can say that they've interacted with each other or somehow seem to be connected. Now, you take these two particles and you throw one particle in one direction and you throw the other particle in in the opposite direction. Now, let's say particle 1 on this side, particle 2 on this side. You go to particle 1 and you measure its property called spin, and you say, oh, what's the spin of this particle? And let's say it is spin down. Then you go to particle 2 on the opposite side, and it can be as far away as you want, very, very far. And you measure the spin of that one. It will always be the reverse. If this one is down, that one will show up as up. If you take another measurement and this one is up, and you later go and measure this one, or even simultaneously or immediately after measure the other one, it shows up as down. So either up hai to either down hai to either up. It's somehow, it feels, it looks to us as if somehow this particle, even though it's nowhere in contact with this other one, without ever interacting, I mean, it interacted with it in the past, but not in currently in interaction with the other, somehow is able to communicate to the other that, okay, I'm up, you better be down. I'm down, you better be up. That communication just happens instantly and faster than the speed of light, which, as we know in physics, is the upper limit for anything, for matter and for energy to move. Matter and energy cannot move faster than the speed of light. So somehow something happened between these two, even though they are there's more distance than light can travel, to tell this one that, okay, I'm up, you better be down. I'm down, you better be up. There's no time for that communication to happen. The distance is too large for that. And yet this particle takes the opposite property. So this is known as, so there's an assumption in physics called local realism, which says that there are two things in local realism. So when we are talking about reality, ये reality जो है, ये जो ब्रह्मांड है, ये जो सच्चाई है, ये जो दुनिया है, उसकी दो फंडामेंटल प्रॉपर्टी है जिसको हमने अजूम करके रखा है अभी तक. What are those two properties? One property of matter is that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. That is number one assumption. And that has been proven over and over. Second assumption is that things have properties of their own accord, whether that property is measured or not. वो मेजर करो या ना करो, वो उसका जो गुण है वो उसका गुण है, वैसा हमने सोच के रखा है. Kind of, to put it in common terms or in terms that we understand, the classic question of, if a tree falls in a forest and there is nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? So what are your thoughts on this? If a tree falls in a forest and there is no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? So let me hear you guys. What do you think? Does it make a sound, yes or no?
Not in my awareness.
Okay, but does it make a sound? You are not there, nobody is there. Does it make a sound?
Maybe, but not in my awareness.
Okay. Okay. हाँ कविता जी unmute.
What I feel is that this magic of matter up and down and connecting, I feel if that God particle is there in everything, so through that light, they must be communicating because there's God everywhere. Or that God particle, consciousness, it's there in the matter, it's in the form of light. So the physics, they're considering it as matter, but it is surrounded by light. That's how they are communicating. And light is, sound is there. Even if somebody cannot hear it on its own, because then that's how the other tree will also hear, which is not there.
The other tree will also hear. The other tree will hear.
Other tree or the other person.
अरे person है ही नहीं कोई, यही तो पूछ रहा हूँ. If nobody is there,
we don't know. But then there is sound.
You're sure about this? This is an assumption. This is an assumption, Kavita ji. This is an assumption.
Is a googly question.
Googly question के इसलिए मेरे को googly answer चाहिए. This is an assumption.
It depends what you consider sound as.
So it's like
sound
saying
is a vibration.
Deep sleep, the word is not there. It's like
sorry.
When we are in deep sleep, the word is not there.
Correct.
So you're saying if nobody is there, so there is no sound. So the world is an illusion. The tree is an illusion. Right?
Yeah.
So then even the tree is not falling actually.
The tree is not falling and there's no sound also. तो आप जवाब बदल रहे हैं आपका, ये तो मुझे लग रहा है.
आंसर दे रही हूँ.
हाँ नहीं, पहले आपने कहा कि yes it makes a sound. Now you're saying no it doesn't. It's not even there.
Thought of the world that when we are in deep sleep, the world is not there. So then I changed because of that.
Now you're changing it. Now you're saying that it doesn't make a sound. Okay, चलो बताइए पुरुषोत्तम जी.
मैं भी बोल रहा हूँ. मुझे बोलना है.
हाँ बोलिए पांडे जी बोलिए.
ये लग रहा है कि the sound in the sense, जैसा कि अनामिका ने कहा ना, in the sense that somebody is hearing is not there. हमारे कानों के पर्दे पर वाइब्रेशन नहीं हो रहा है, कंपन नहीं हो रहा है, तो वो साउंड उस तरह से नहीं है. बट those vibrations are there. अभी अभी कुछ समय पहले न्यूज में भी आया था कि ब्रह्मांड से वो आवाज आ रही है, कुछ ओम की आवाज, ध्वनि जो है. और दृष्टि और है, वो क्वांटम फिजिक्स में जो आपने बताया ना, उसमें वो है कि दृष्टा से दृष्टि है. टिल द ऑब्जर्वर इट एग्जिस्ट. व्हेन देयर इज नो ऑब्जर्वर देयर इज नथिंग.
There is no property. That property only, exactly. So here we are saying there is no observer for the sound. So does the sound exist?
So for that sake, sound does not exist.
For that?
For that sake.
To that extent it doesn't exist. हाँ, पुरुषोत्तम जी. चलिए सभी अपना अभिप्राय दीजिए.
If the falling tree is making sound, if somebody is there to hear, then it will make a sound if nobody is there to hear. It will not change his behavior.
Okay, चलो, okay, आगे बढ़ते हैं. चलो सभी अपना अपना अभिप्राय. अनामिका, what were you saying? वीडियो तो ऑन करो. Everyone turn on videos except पांडे जी. पांडे जी भी कर सकते हैं, क्या है?
मैं कर देता हूँ आपको.
हाँ,
फिर आपको
बिल्कुल बड़े अच्छे लग रहे हो, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? चलिए अनामिका, what were you saying? Okay, meantime, Sonal, tree falls in a forest, nobody is there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Anamika is not there to hear what that.
Anamika is not there to hear the question. Okay, huh?
So Sanjivji is not. Sanjivji, you're not making a sound because Anamika is not there. So for her, you're not making.
And for all the people who didn't join, what about them? Am I making a sound or I'm not making a sound? for
You're
all
making
the
for us, not for them.
Sir, it will
making
make
the
a sound. The tree will make a sound,
will
but
make
if I am not there, I won't hear it.
The statement makes
does it make a sound or not? The question is not does it. Nobody is there to hear it. Is there? Does it make a sound?
It will make a sound.
What? It will make a sound. Nobody has heard it, but it makes a sound.
वो गिरने
How do
का
you know this?
आवाज आएगा अगर किसी ने सुना नहीं सुना इट्स अ डिफरेंट इशू
आएगा पक्का. Well, this is an assumption. This is an assumption. ये पता नहीं हमें. This is an assumption. पक्का बोल रहे हैं, but किसी ने अनुभव तो किया नहीं आज तक.
ट्री इज डिवाइन ट्री तो अनुभव करेगी ना कि उसका आवाज आया गिरने का
ट्री आवाज का अनुभव करेगी. ओके चलो वो भी मान लेते हैं. आगे. ओके नेक्स्ट नैन्सी बोलो.
I
And
guess
we'll-
आएगी
What?
आएगी आवाज
आएगी आएगी. कॉमन सेंस है. ये क्या पूछ रहे हैं संजीव जी आज पता
संजीव जी,
नहीं.
लेकिन हाउ कैन यू से दिस इज assumption? बिकॉज अगर हमने एक टाइम वो सुना है गिरते हुए एक झाड़ को एंड वी हैव हर्ड अ साउंड, ऐसा झाड़ अगर फिर से गिरता है तो लॉजिक है कि इट इज आवाज करेगा. यू कांट से इट इज assumption.
Well, guess what?
What?
The Nobel Prize for Physics in 2022 was awarded to three gentlemen uh, by the names of John Clauser, Elaine Aspect, and Anton Zellinger. So these three gentlemen have been awarded the Physics Prize, proving that what you are saying is not correct, that is not a correct assumption. They have just proven that your assumption कि एक बार मैंने सुना और आवाज हुआ, that means और मैं नहीं हूं तब भी आवाज करेगा, is an incorrect assumption. They have proven it experimentally through quantum physics, and I will explain a little more about how they have proven it. So ये जो so local realism is one idea, जिसका मतलब है कि things nothing, there are two assumptions कि ये जो reality है is based on local realism, which means what? One, local means nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. That is one assumption कि ये सच है कि nothing can travel faster than speed of light. So, and the second assumption is that properties have, I mean, objects and matter has properties independent of observation. मतलब आप ऑब्जर्व करो या ना करो, उसका गुण जो है वो है. ये दूसरा assumption है. और यही assumption को प्रूव या नहीं प्रूव करने के लिए एक बंदा था, I forget his last name, his surname is, I mean first name is, surname is Bell, and Bell wrote this theorem कि अगर ये local realism सच है तो ऐसा वाला एक्सपेरिमेंट करेंगे आप. ये पार्टिकल, दोनों पार्टिकल, entangled particles, if they are separated and you measure, then the chances of those properties being a certain number, it would mean that that calculation of the properties, आप 100 बार 1000 बार वही experiment करो, and then the average values of these spin up and down properties, and you add and multiply and all kinds of algebra which I won't get into. But the sum total is that when you do hundreds of these, whatever the total equation, which is called the CHSH equation, named after 4 other physicists, maybe Clauser is one of them, the C stands for his name. But anyway, that number should be less than 2. Less than or equal to 2. इतना ये इससे कम आना चाहिए ये number. That is the theorem. If the number is less than 2, then we are good. Our assumption is correct that reality behaves in this way, that speed of light is not exceeded, and matter has properties whether you observe it or not. That observation does not create the property. That those two assumptions are correct. Now this experiment got refined and refined and refined, and these three guys, Clauser, Aspect, and Zellinger, who by the way are working in 3 different countries. One guy is in Clauser in the US, Zellinger is in Austria, and Aspect is in Paris. Incidentally, just a side, but John Clauser was a student of physics at Columbia University, where I went to graduate school. I studied also at Columbia University. और ये पहले जो experiment ये Clauser ने किए, in fact the paper, he found this paper by Bell, an obscure paper जिसको ज़्यादा किसी ने भाव नहीं दिया. For years nobody looked at it, but John Clauser bumped into this paper in the library of Columbia University, where I have myself spent many hours sitting and reading in that same library.
John Bell.
And John Bell, yeah, he found John Bell's paper and decided to conduct an experiment. Am I still there? Yes? Okay. Yeah, so conduct an experiment to see whether this theorem is true or not. ये number 2 से कम आता है number या ज़्यादा आता है. So he did a small experiment, and then there were certain loopholes which possibly इसका वजह से है करके. Then these 3 physicists collaborated across continents and across, space and time, and they created these more sophisticated, very sophisticated experiment in which there is absolutely no doubt that what it'll prove beyond a shadow of doubt कि ये सच है या गलत है. So, and the answer is that they did all these experiments, and the question was ये number 2 या 2 से नीचे आया तो then ये assumption हमारे सही है, 2 से ऊपर आया तो ये गलत है. And after many experiments, repeated, they do averaging, and they could do all kinds of calculations to make sure that everything is rigorously measured and there's no loopholes and errors and whatever. The number came out to be 2.86. Okay, so it's a number greater than 2. Okay, so it in fact it is 2 times square root of 2, or 2.86. I thought it was 0.414, but anyway, whatever. So the number is 2.86. Okay, this is the magic number, and it shatters our assumptions about reality. In other words, to put it in terms of common experience, the particle doesn't have any property on its own. Only when you measure it, when you observe it, it gets that property. Without that observation, the property does not exist. And now we are stretching it from, particle level properties to macro. But if we stretch it, then without an observer, not only the tree doesn't make a sound, the tree isn't even there. Not only the tree isn't there, even the forest isn't there. Everything comes into existence by the act of observation. Or to put it in terms of awareness or consciousness, it is awareness or consciousness which precedes reality. Or that consciousness के वजह से consciousness brings reality into existence. That reality does not exist independent of consciousness. There is no such thing. Consciousness, and this is also nobody has ever experienced anything. There is no basis for the existence of anything in the absence of consciousness. So the classical science says कि पहले कुछ energy or matter था, फिर Big Bang, which means space stretched out. You can call it the big stretch. Actually, it's a better term than Big Bang. That space itself stretched out. It is not that the particles are exploding and moving. Space itself stretches out into, for thousands of years. And space, by the way, that expansion can happen faster than the speed of light. So even faster than the speed of light, this space expanded, and all of this. So classical physics and classical science says कि ये सब हुआ, बाद में फिर एक सन हुआ, फिर एक solar system बना, फिर उस पे कुछ some molecules of, some very rudimentary molecules, complex molecules, protein molecules somehow got together in a sea of, in a soup of life in the ocean, and then those got together and made a cell, and those got together and made a complex cell, and those got together and made an amoeba, and those got together and made some very fun basic life form, and those got together and made animals and birds and bees and finally human beings, and then those got together, or that intelligence came together, and then finally out of this came consciousness. Consciousness is, in classical science, is the last step in the evolutionary process of life and of the universe. That consciousness is the product of all these events happening, and then consciousness came into existence. So this is the classical way of thinking. Of course, this means we are separate people, separate beings. There's no such thing as oneness, and there's no such thing as a universal consciousness. There's only individuals, and there's individual consciousness, which is simply a collection of brain matter and thoughts and feelings, and that collection is consciousness. And this model of operating has gotten us to the point of, we are about to, the possibility of nuclear war is there, because we see ourselves as separate, and we are about to destroy this planet and all that stuff. So that's the problem with this model. One problem is that this is what it has led us. If we knew we are one, we would never be walking the path we are walking on. But apart from that, now physics is coming to the same conclusion. So what is physics saying? That without observation, matter does not have any properties. Or in other words, you can say it virtually doesn't exist. I mean, what is something which has no properties? It's nothing. It's the properties that give it its existence. How do I know that this mic is here? It has a softness, hardness, this, that, all these properties are there. अगर ये properties ही नहीं है, इसको तो ये mic है ही नहीं. और ये property जो है, ये coming into existence because of observation, only because of observation. The act of observation, before the observation, it just exists as a possibility. Or in mathematical terms, it's a probability. Or even more precise terms, it exists as what they call a wave equation, which means it's just a bunch of possibilities. Isko koi jagah nahi hai, isko koi gun nahi hai. It just exists as a possible function, wave function. But then when you observe it, is when that collapse of the wave function happens, and it collapses into a particular place at a particular time and a particular location with particular set of properties. Just by the fact that it was observed, the wave function collapses and the particle comes into existence. So the act of observation is what is creating, and that is what these three guys have proven experimentally. So the two possibilities were कि या तो light की speed has no limit. There's something which can travel faster than light, or nothing exists unless it is observed. So speed of light has never been observed to be greater than what it is in vacuum, which is 300,000 kilometers per second. Nobody ever, anywhere, has ever made an observation anywhere in the universe, anywhere on earth, in any experiment, where they found that the speed of light was higher than that. So one of these two things or both these things are false. Speed of light is finite and what it is, and the other is about observation, that without observation things exist independent of observation. तो पहला assumption तो हमने कभी उसको गलत होते हुए देखा ही नहीं है. इसका मतलब है ये दूसरा ऑब्जर्वेशन गलत है, ये दूसरा जो postulate है ये वो गलत है. This is what they are saying. And what is that second one? The second one is saying that things have properties without being observed. So unfortunately, Sonal, what physics has proven and what Nobel Prize has been given is saying that unless something is observed, it has no properties. This assumption that it has properties independent of observation is a wrong assumption. It's an incorrect assumption. It doesn't exist. So the tree doesn't exist, the sound doesn't exist, the forest doesn't exist unless it is observed, unless consciousness. So the whole model needs to be turned upside down. Not that nothing was there, then something, and slowly it became more and more complex, and then finally came consciousness. It needs to be turned around. That the first thing that arrived, or the first thing that out of nothingness came consciousness, and not human consciousness, consciousness itself, awareness itself. Yes, human beings may have come at some other point in time, but consciousness itself, human beings is one manifestation of consciousness, one way in which consciousness expresses itself and manifests itself, one creation. But that consciousness, which is the observer of all there is the real creator of everything. There is nothing that exists in the absence of that consciousness or awareness or observation. I'm stretching physics a little bit. I'm stretching this observation beyond the realms of rigorous physics. But hey, why not? I mean, it makes it feels right. It feels right. That is one. And the other is that if we accept this further interpretation and further conclusion of this experiment, then what are we left with? We are left with understanding that there is only consciousness. We are left with the understanding, you want to call it divine, you want to call it God, you want to call it presence, source, whatever. That is the primary, the first thing that happened is God. The first thing that happened is consciousness. That it begins with that, and there is only one consciousness. So we are left with conclusions which lead us to understand that I and you are one, that I and the earth are one, the animals, the plants, the stars, everything is just one. And it also leaves us with the what does it leave us with? It leaves us with nothing but love. It leaves us with the end of wars. It leaves us with the end of, polluting and damaging and killing life and killing the earth. It leaves us as much, 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 much more aligned human beings who are aligned with the way we would really like to see the world. We would like to see the world in which we are all connected with bridges rather than separated by walls. And this model, where we accept this physics, pure physics, not classical, but quantum physics, but rigorous physics. We accept rigorous physics and just take it one little step further, and we are left with a very, very, very wonderful model for what life is about, for what the world is about, for what you are about, what I am about. One which leaves us with love, leaves us with beauty, leaves us with truth, leaves us in awe, and leaves us caring for each other, leaves us caring for the planet automatically and naturally, not out of force and not out of, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that, but recognizing that I am all that there is. That child crying and scared in a basement in Ukraine is also me. And what can I do to stop that? It leaves us with those questions. So even though this consciousness first cannot be experimentally proved, or maybe physics one day will also prove and include consciousness in its equations, but until then, I would say that why not take this as a more valid and more worthwhile interpretation of reality, because it makes us better human beings. It makes us more loving and more happy. So why not go for that rather than one which is taking us towards self-destruction? Great.
I
हाँ
asked a
सोनल,
question in the chat.
हाँ बोलिए.
So does it mean that only I witnessed, or say only witness is important for every action?
Consciousness is not just important. We are coming to the same conclusion that we came to when we took those two stones, that what actually exists is not the stones, but the experience of the stones. What actually exists is not the experience of the stones, but the knowing of the stones. What actually exists is not the knowing of the stones, but consciousness. So
Observation, you said, na? Whoever is observing.
observation itself, knowingness itself, that all there is awareness. All there is awareness. At a fundamental level, physics has gone to the level of fundamental particles. What we are saying is there is even, like, you look at this mic and okay, fundamentally it is a sponge, and fundamentally it is rubber, but for more fundamentally it is a molecule, and more fundamentally it is a bunch of atoms, and more fundamentally it's a bunch of subparticles and subatomic particles. What we are saying is even more fundamentally than the subatomic particles is awareness, is consciousness.
Agreed. Just for a discussion. Sir, you said we could stop the wars if everybody could understand this. But how I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
Awareness
So,
होने के बाद war stop करने के लिए.
so when we understand awareness, we also want to understand what is awareness like, what is the nature of awareness. We also want to know how many awarenesses are there. When we ask these questions to awareness, we find that it is infinite. There is no limit to this awareness. And that this awareness which we are referring to not only is limitless, if it is in fact limitless and unbounded, there can be only one awareness. There is only one awareness. It is not like my awareness and your awareness are two different awareness.
Today we are 11 people.
Yeah, so we think we are 11 awarenesses. That is what our assumption is. We are 11 minds, 11 bodies, 11 opinions, 11 circumstances, 11 different set of realities in terms of your where you live and what you do and what your name is and what your body is. We are 11 awarenesses. Sorry, we are 11 minds, 11 bodies. But at the level of awareness, there is not 11 awarenesses. It is one awareness. Showing up as Sanjeev, same awareness showing up as this microphone, same awareness showing up as Sonal. There are not 11 awarenesses. There are 11 attentions. There are 11 brains. There are 11 bodies, but only one awareness. You understand? So, and how do we know there is only one awareness? If something is infinite. First, we did this experiment, if you remember, at the retreat. If you describe your awareness and you write down 10 things about your awareness, 10 things about the I you write, you find that it is limitless. You find that it is formless. You find that it is timeless. You find that it is open. You find that it doesn't resist anything. You find that it becomes one with experience. you find that it is the fundamental you that you know yourself to be. You write 10, 15, 30, 100 different things about your awareness. I write 100 things about so-called my awareness. 10 different people, 1,000,000 different people write their descriptions of awareness. We find that the descriptions are all the same. If you describe your house and my house, it'll be different. My house description will be different. Your house description will be different. Your clothes description is different. My clothes description is different. But your description of awareness and my description of awareness turn out to be exactly the same. Maybe the words change here and there because of vocabulary. But we are talking about the same thing. Now, if something is there, if I have one thing which I am describing in a certain way, and you have something which is you are describing in the same way, exactly the same, and we cannot distinguish these two things from each other, then how much of a logical jump it is to just say that हम एक ही बात की बात कर रहे हैं भैया. We are talking about the same thing. Very, very important to understand this. And when you understand this, the whole world changes. Know that your awareness and my awareness are not two. Advaita, non-duality का यही फंडा है. That there is not two awarenesses, not two gods. How can it be? How can two things be infinitely powerful? If there are two things which are infinitely powerful, then this one thing is not infinitely powerful, because there is one more thing which is infinitely powerful, and therefore this is not infinitely powerful. If something is infinitely powerful, it can be only one. There can only be one of those. If you say, it's like saying, this person is the fastest runner in the world, and this person is also the fastest runner in the world. Is it possible? Cannot be. There must be only one person who is the fastest in the world. You're understanding? So if something is infinite, it can only be one. Now, if we understand that there is only one awareness, if I understand that I and you are fundamentally the same, fundamentally we are one, what would be my motivation to harm you? It would be stupid. It would be like slapping your own face. Nobody does that. What would be the motivation for Russia to invade Ukraine if there was an understanding that they are one fundamentally, that the differences are all on the surface? There is no need for war because you are all the same. Separation is the basis for war. Oneness is the basis for peace. And that peace is automatic and natural. Just like maybe if a stranger does something, something that you don't like, a stranger does something that you don't like, and you may want to fight with that person. But maybe your own brother or your sister does the same thing. You will be much more willing to forgive. अरे ये तो मेरा भाई है, चल करने दो उसको, ये तो मेरी बहन है, ठीक है. But if it's a neighbor, you may want to fight with them. Why you are doing this? So when you see yourself as one, then the differences disappear and you are automatically led towards peace, towards love. And when there is love, where is the place for war? Do you understand? Getting it, Sonal?
Yeah, getting it, but how do you apply it? I don't know.
Sanjivji, Now, for example.
Understanding is okay.
Yeah. Okay, last question.
Yeah, last. For example, we are now 10 people here and we are witnessing you in open door. Okay?
Yeah.
In our awareness is one, correct? That's what you're saying. But the person who has not come here, say, who has not come here, Kusum. Kusum has not come here. So in her awareness, there is still open door existing because our awareness is one. But if nobody had come here, are you saying that if none of us would have witnessed this, then this open door had not happened? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for it not to have happened, no one would have to be here, including me.
Exactly.
So if nobody is
when
there
it
and
comes to one person's awareness, it is in existence. Are you telling us that? Because awareness is one.
not that way, not that way, not that way. For something to exist, awareness must exist first.
Correct.
That is the only thing we are saying. Awareness pre-exists all other existence.
That's what you're saying.
That's all I'm saying. Awareness, and that awareness is only one. It is not two separate awarenesses. So even though it is not in Kusum's
How will
awareness,
you define that awareness?
no, it is that which you turn to when I ask you, are you there? Nothing complicated. Are you there? Yes. What did you?
That which never changes.
That which never changes. That which you look at when you ask, are you there? That is what I'm talking about. Yes, Sonal.
But in war situation, how will Putin come to know about his own awareness?
That's the whole thing. Putin.
Sonal knows, Sanjivji knows. Sonal knows, Sanjivji knows, and 11 of us know. But when the war situation is there, how will it be that they also know? Because the
I
whole
know.
world is there into it.
Exactly.
Sanjivji, may I say something?
One sec. So everyone doesn't know this. Everyone is living on the assumption that awareness is the last thing. What we are saying, awareness is the first thing. Everyone doesn't know this. There was a long time when people thought Earth was flat. Lots of people all around the world thought the world was flat. And then slowly they understood that world is round. So that's what it is. Everyone suddenly doesn't know everything. Somebody said Earth is round. Then 5 people knew, 10 people knew, 30 people knew, then a million people. Now the whole world knows. So that's the same thing with...
Sanjivji, this what Sonal is saying about war. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi used to say that even if 2% of the people meditate from one side to the other, that consciousness will pervade and there'll be peace.
Correct.
TM, that's what he used to say.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and they've proven it also. They've proven it. They've had people in Washington, D.C., which is one of the highest crime areas. They had a few hundred people who started meditating in that city without telling anybody anything. What they found was that statistically, actual crime statistics, the crime rate was falling. The crime rate started falling because people were in that space, in that awareness, in that consciousness. So that's the fun part. So eventually as more and more people understand this and realize this and start living by it, Putin ko bhi pata chal jayega. Putin will also hear about it someday. And he'll say, wait a minute, why am I fighting with my brother Zelensky? So, yeah, and when that happens, there is no space for war. Get it?
So there will be no space for anything, at arguments, fights, nothing at all then.
Yeah, you want fights and arguments? You're talking like as you're missing it already.
No. I just now come from a society meeting and all fights are going on. So I was just thinking, if this is everything, then fights and all should not be there.
Will not. Bring oneness into that meeting. Bring your oneness. When you are interacting with other members of the society, remember that they are also you in another form, and see how the tone of the conversation changes, and see what happens after that. When you are one with your neighbor is when you automatically get the ability to see it from their point of view. And then when you talk to them, rather than an attack, it comes across as, I know you really, whatever it is, love music, so you like to play it loudly at night, right? And I also love music. I love that. I love music, and I know you really love it. You'd put it that way. But please, can you see that you turn it off after bedtime hours, like by 10:30? Is it possible? As opposed to, I and you are separate, then your tone of voice is, what nonsense, don't you understand? Don't you have any civic sense? Don't you have any manners? What kind of person are you? Hooligans playing music, party music in the middle of the night. This is unacceptable, intolerable. This is a setup for war. And the other one is a setup for peace. You're getting the point?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Hari Om Tat Sat. The time to say bye and hug you and love you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.